If you have finished your normal 12 to 13, whatever, years of education, and you decide that maybe you want to educate yourself a little further, maybe to a bachelor's level or, in some cases, a master's level, and you want to get this shiny piece of paper that states that you have a master's level education in a certain field or in a certain study. Well, guess what? There's a thing called college for that. And this idea, in my opinion, is a waste of both time and money. And I have a few reasons for this. I will not sit and shit on certain colleges. This is not meant to do that. I don't have like a specific one that I want to, shit on. I'm trying not to swear too much, but it's not just that. It's just the ideation as a whole of college is, to me at least, incredibly pointless. And of course, I'm going to explain why. Number one, more and more jobs nowadays are not requiring you to even go to college. Back maybe when I was growing up, college degrees were practically required if you wanted to get a really good job. And I am not saying, I'm going to point this out right now, I am not saying that having a college degree is bad. I am not saying that at all. I am just saying sitting through however many years that it requires for you to get a bachelor's/master's in whatever field you decide to pursue. I am just saying that sometimes it's not worth it. But I'm not saying if you have a college degree, hanging on your wall or in a file cabinet somewhere, I'm not saying you're a nerd or anything. I'm just saying, nowadays in today's climate, sitting through it might not be worth it. But yeah, literally now, because of a few different factors, mainly COVID when it hit the first time. Excuse me. When COVID hit the first time, it made nobody want to work. And rightfully so, we didn't want to all get sick, and plus we could sit at home and collect a bunch of checks. So when COVID kind of started to get on the down, I don't know why I said it like that, when COVID on the charts kind of started to plummet, and nowadays, at least from what I'm aware, pretty much nobody's worried about it anymore. People still didn't want to work, because why would you want to actually get up and drive to work every day when you could just sit on the couch, eat Doritos, and watch, I don't know, America's Funniest Home Videos, and get a check from the government? I get it. People are lazy. So to combat this, a lot of companies rose the minimum wage, and basically, I won't say where I live, but the McDonald's near where I live is literally paying $17.50 an hour for closers, and it used to not be that high. And because of that, I believe in my eyes it has also kind of affected some of the jobs who normally would output higher standards, in the sense that they now say stuff like, okay, well, we wanted you to have at least a bachelor's degree, but now we just need people who will work. So now they're lowering their standards, and because of that, at least in the current climate, less and less companies require a college education. So in turn, less and less people need to get one. I don't know, I just woke up and I'm tired, but there is a point here. This isn't really a point against it, but this is just a point that I'm going to make in general. It used to be that even if you got a bachelor's, which is the first thing that you'd get, you don't even need to sit and pursue a master's. You can get a frickin' bachelor's degree and stop there, and that will still work wonders, because that will show that you actually went through the effort. But it kind of off-puts itself by the fact that I just said, and I still stand by the fact that I just said, you don't even need one. A lot of people will just look at your past record and then say, alright, we found you fit, you're hired. But another thing I wanted to point out, I have an article here on medium.com. I don't know if they are, I don't know if they're trustworthy or not, but this is just one I found. 4 reasons why college degrees are becoming useless. And keep in mind, I'm not just reading straight from this, but keep in mind, this was literally published June 19th, 2017. So this was starting even back in the late 2010s, and it hasn't gotten any better in my eyes. I won't sit and read this entire article, but I'm just going to point out some of the biggest points. The first point they state is graduates have little to no improvement in critical thinking skills. This is administered in over 200 colleges across the US. According to the Wall Street Journal, quote, at more than half of schools, at least a third of seniors were unable to make a cohesive argument, assess the quality of evidence in a document, or interpret data in a table. The outcomes were the worst in large flagship schools. At some of the most prestigious flagship universities, test results indicate the average graduate shows little to no improvement in critical thinking over their 4-year term. Now, keep this in mind. Reading data in a table should be a basic thing. You don't even need to be like the one putting the data points in the table. You should just be able to read it and understand it. And keep in mind, at the time of me recording this, I'm 20 years old. I'm practically an adult, but I'm not like a 40-year-old. I'm not fully developed. And I can read data in a table. And I know how to assess quality and evidence in any document. And these are people who are going to college to get degrees, and these are supposed to be people who are really smart, and they can't do it. And like, I genuinely don't understand it. I'm not saying they're stupid, because that's a different point to make entirely. I'm just saying it kind of proves the point that, you know. Alright. So, this is to my other point. I just read this now, but this is to my other point. As these graduates enter the workforce and reveal that they do not have the required skills to excel in their jobs, employers are beginning to discount the degree signal as well. Google, for example, doesn't care if potential hires have a college degree, and end up looking past academic credentials for other characteristics that better predict job performance. This is literally tying into what I said a second ago, which is a lot of major companies do not give a shit anymore if you went to college. They are looking for other things because it literally proves that going to college doesn't mean anything. Yeah, you could have a shiny piece of paper that says you graduated college, but clearly it's proven that a lot of people who are in college are not coherent in any way, shape, or form. This is not to say that everybody who goes to college is incoherent, it's just to prove that a lot of people who do are still incoherent despite college's efforts. So the fact of the matter with that is it literally doesn't even matter if you go, they won't even look at that anymore anyway. Another point I want to point out, because there actually are some in here that stick with what I wanted to do. My point is that just to prove this, I know you can't see it, but I literally have a sticky note here that says my 4 main points, but my point says, most of the time, getting a college degree doesn't actually help, especially mentally, and I put in parentheses, people who drop out of college usually end up just fine and sometimes even better compared to the people who stick it through. Medium's point is, and I quote, trade schools and self-study offer better outcomes for many. And again, I'm not going to bore you, I'm just going to read like a decent bit. College dropouts are doing just fine, bucking the stereotype. Some determined young people are skipping college altogether to pursue their business ideas. Many are also choosing trade schools, which require less time and tuition money, but graduates end up with a specific set of skills. Young men in particular are leaving college in droves. Over the past decade, 30% of male freshmen dropped out before starting a second year. And again, keep in mind, the people who drop out are doing fine. They're doing great. It's literally a commitment to do it. It costs so much money, and a lot of people who end up going to college, unless they're born into a rich-ass family, they need government help just to go get a higher education. And it's making it so that it's super difficult to even stick through it because of the fact that you need to either be rich or, like I said, have extensive government funding. And here's an example. I need to find the dude's first name. Hold on. I don't know. It says Stark as his last name, but it doesn't say his first name. Stark, 28, studied computer science for a year and a half before leaving Metro State University to study on his own. He is now a software engineer for a music company in Denver, Colorado, and he also DJs at some of the area's most notable nightclubs. He states, "What I was getting in that classroom just didn't jive with me. I felt I could teach myself better on the internet." That's funny. He worked a fast food job and then took a corporate gig to support himself while he studied on his own. The alternative, he said, was to work 4 years to get a bachelor's degree and then another year or two to earn a master's degree. Then, quote, "go to work for some huge company, go home at night, then live with my family." Or then just live my life with my family, and that just didn't sound appealing to me at the time. And Marty is playing with this toy. But another thing that it says, observers may see young men delude themselves into thinking they are one idea away from being the next Bill Gates. They can make a fortune without a college degree. While these dropouts imagine they can succeed without a degree, successful startups are rare, while young men without degrees in general. I'm trying to find where that is also a point that I do want to make even for the other side. Some people go in and they just immediately assume, this sucks, I'm gonna just drop one idea and be a billionaire, and that's not how it works. Notice the call for helping these poor young men thrive in higher education that precedes a small anecdote about one man who dropped out and ended up perfectly fine. It's just, there is evidence to going to college, but there's a lot of points that, especially nowadays, prove that literally it's not worth it. Their final point is, tuition is increasing but future earnings are decreasing. In another recent Wall Street Journal article, we see the financial consequences of these trends. While tuition keeps climbing across the country, i.e. for people who don't really know what that means, it's just the amount you have to pay to stick in college, the prospect earnings of graduates aren't keeping up. There is a lot of variation across colleges and majors, but the overall trend is that the returns to a 4-year degree are increasing, or decreasing. Since students are just getting started in life, it means that they must borrow to pay for these expensive degrees that don't guarantee higher earnings. Total student loans are at $1.3 trillion and climbing. To put that into perspective for you guys, that basically means that the amount that it takes to go through a college tuition of even 4 years is climbing so high that most students are borrowing to pay for said expensive tuitions, and they don't even guarantee that their earnings will be enough to pay them back, so they almost always end up being in debt unless they have government funding, and even so they might end up in debt after the fact, which is bullshit, especially considering everything else they have to deal with. And you guys can't see it, but there's a chart that starts from 2004 and ends in 2017 and shows stuff like the student loan increase, credit card funds increase, and mortgage, auto loan, line of credit, yada yada. And the student loan is going from about 6%, and in 2017 it goes up beyond 12%. That is almost a double increase. That is pretty much double what it was like 13 years ago. And these trends are unsustainable. The higher education system seems to be suffering from both economic and cultural issues, but these two types of problems often cause each other in a feedback loop. The ultimate cause for both of them is political. Well, I'm not going to get into political stuff on this episode, but the point being is that currently, right now, in the landscape that we are looking at, going to college is pointless, and it is a waste of money and a waste of time. Working at a fast food place isn't even that bad. I've worked at like 3. And technically at the time of recording, if I get hired again, I'll be working at 4. It is really not that bad. You do not have to do that much. You usually get free lunch. You can take paid time off like every other place. The place I'm going to maybe will end up paying me every other week. And it's like, it's really not that bad. And this is a different topic entirely, so I won't focus on it, but a lot of people feel like working at a fast food place is like the absolute death of their entire character. And granted, I will concede a small bit, because when I was a lot younger, I thought working at McDonald's would be like the worst thing in the world. But then I grew up and I realized money's money. And a lot of the time, I've seen those fast food places pay more than a lot of other actual, like, I don't want to say respectable, because I feel like there are some people who do have respect for, you know, fast food workers and all those other people. But my point is, I've seen a lot of fast food places pay way more than a lot of major companies will. Major companies will pay like, what, $13 an hour, and then you'll see someone cooking burgers at a fast food joint, and yeah, they're surrounded by grease all the time, but they're getting paid like $18 an hour. And at the end of the day, from my experience, if you work as a chef or you work as like a backroom person, you said the backrooms, yeah, I know. But if you work as a person who just stocks in the backroom or cooks, you won't ever have to deal with any people. And more often than not, depending on where you work, you'll get free lunch. And it's really not that bad. And it's especially better than wasting all your time and money on a 4-year bachelor's degree and getting put however much money in debt.